Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Peter.
Um, just in case nobody knows this, this is Mike Alfreds. Mike Alfreds is a theatre director, and he has had a long and, as people would say, a very distinguished career as a theatre director. And if this is the first video you've ever seen of us chatting, then you've missed just a load of gems. Mike and I have been talking over virtually a year, and I think there are something like 40 something interviews between Mike and me. And also, I have also interviewed a load of mainly actors who worked with Mike, but also a movement person, Sue Lefton, Patsy Rodenberg, and we've covered just a vast amount of stuff. Mike, we started for a good 20 episodes. We sort of talked about your life, and once we'd looked at that, and I hasten to add that during the time that we talked about your life, we were talking also about your life in theatre and also about how you went about working. So it wasn't just about I went and had a fish and chips on Friday. It was mainly about your theatre work. And then for the second half of our set of interviews, we concentrated very exclusively on the way in which you work. And we are coming to the end of that. And I just want to say briefly that we're almost a year on from the end of our set of interviews. December the 30th we ended. And our chat today is more about kind of sort of retrospective thinking about what came out of all those interviews over the course of that probably about 6 months that we talked to each other in the second half of last year during the height of the pandemic. So, good morning, Mike. Are you in good shape?
Yeah, pretty good shape. Yes, I think so. Yeah, a lot of things have happened in the intervening year, but I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay.
What's amazing is that you just had non-stop work. It seems like, I mean, trying to fit you in for these interviews and for our chats, it seems like, you are still incredibly busy. I'm right about that, aren't I?
Uh, I've had a reasonably steady flow of classes on Zoom, teaching directors, actors, a whole range of things going on. And also, I've been writing a third book, which I'm pretty much coming to the end of, and I may have referred to it en passant. And it's been very much informed by our conversations, actually, which is something, we might mention. So for me, this is sort of like a resume of this extraordinary period of time we've spent talking about me. It feels like a terrible exercise in vanity, but actually it's been very productive for me and very informative. And first of all, Peter, I have to thank you for your patience and your industry and, your perseverance with me, really, keeping the thing going. And it's been a very strange experience, particularly at this stage in my life, because it is a resume of my entire existence almost, really. It is very, very strange, so quite poignant and odd. And I've discovered quite a lot out of it, which has been very, very good. And I'm also very curious what you've got out of it, because it has been a two-way event. And you've put a lot of energy into it, more than I have, in fact, because you've done all the chasing people up and the cutting and, organizing everything and putting it on YouTube. And I hope it's been rewarding for you. So I'd love to know, what your feelings are. So in a way, it should be more about you than me.
I mean, one of the things that has come out of this, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have reconnected with a number of people that you might not have had that kind of connection with over the last few decades. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Now, what's been one of the wonderful things is because you've contacted actors I've worked with very early in my career, some of them, not because of any sort of dislike or indifference, we just lost contact with each other, and we've sort of met up again via these workshops and interviews. And I've started having very long conversations with them again. And for instance, with Pam Ferris, who worked with me, pretty much steadily for about the first 5 or 6 years of shared experience. We've picked up again, and of course we've been through a lot of life and have done all sorts of different things, and so we're finding out all sorts of things about each other we didn't know, and also recollecting things. And of course, one of the wonderful things about hearing actors talk about their experience working with me is our recollections are very different about certain events. You think, no, that's not when we first met. No, we met at a totally different time, a different place, And, do you remember in rehearsal when you said such and such? And I'm thinking, no, did I say that? And I'm saying, I remember when you did such and such. And they say, oh, did I? And it is extraordinary how fallible, which we all should know, our memories are. And that's been an absolute proof. And, extraordinary, things which were vividly in my mind, have obviously been interpreted, by me at some level of my brain. They've existed, but very differently from the person they were talking to. Very, very strange, very, very interesting. It's been very warming. It's sort of been like a gathering of my life together in many ways, which has been, yes, very so reinforcing and moving. That's been very, very lovely. But also what it's done, it's made me realize an awful lot of things about myself, which I don't think I was fully aware of until I watched these interviews, that I suddenly thought, oh my God, you always did this. And oh my God, you always did that. And I'd never taken those fully into my, sort of awareness.
Can you give an example of that?
Certain patterns of, it's difficult because they're quite subtle. It's, yes, very interesting why in certain cases, I've never fought my side. I've given up when confronted. And then watching people talking about those moments, thinking, oh God, why didn't I fight more for what I wanted then? That's odd. And it was often to do with feeling the people I was dealing with were superior to me in some way. This is some area of insecurity, and it started to make me think more about the fact that I'm Jewish, because I've always taken it very blithely. Yes, I'm Jewish, so what? Yes, I don't believe. I lived in Israel for 5 years purely by circumstance, but thought I'd give God a run and see if he had a purpose for me, and I didn't. And then suddenly thinking that maybe my low an area of low self-esteem is probably a bit too high to put it, but was partly because of being Jewish at a period when you were very much patronized in this country. People weren't openly anti-Semitic to you, but you smelt it in every way. They said, oh, how interesting, you're Jewish. You don't eat ham, do you? That sort of thing went on quite often. And at public school, all the Jewish boys were all put in the same house together, and the house was a house, but it was called Jew House, and things like that. And you sort of got on with it, and and having to go to all the church services, whether I was Jewish or not, which actually I rather enjoyed, and things like that. So maybe you felt a bit of an outsider and you didn't quite belong. Of course, when I'm talking about growing up in the 40s and 50s, and the snobbery, in this country was huge. and hierarchical attitudes. And so maybe a lot of that had seeped in. And it was possible when I was dealing with people who came from sort of Oxbridge upper class areas of theatre, I suddenly felt unqualified to argue with them or insecure. I don't know. I mean, it's a pure projector on my part. Conjecture on my part. And it's worth thinking about because it had never occurred to me. I could have said, oh, let's have another go. Let's try this again. Supposing I do it this way, supposing I do it that way. The other thing, which I was slightly aware of, I was very much on my artistic sort of, superiority. And I often didn't compromise when it wouldn't have hurt to compromise about certain projects. And I maybe did myself a certain amount of damage quite early on in my career. Oh no, I can't do that. It wouldn't be artistic. I got a bit grand. Out of a sense of purity, which I think is still there, and a desire to be truthful. But there are moments when it's right to pursue your beliefs, and there are moments when maybe you think, is it worth, for the sake of the immediate thing, maybe I should judge. So certain things like that have come up, and the fact that I probably have softened in the way I deal with actors, because almost all the actors that you interviewed have said he was very tough with us, not critically, sort of almost admiringly. And all I thought was, I love them all, but I was just demanding because that's what I wanted from them. And possibly I could have been a little gentler in making those demands. I mean, in the Mark Rylance interview, there's something he talks about which I had no idea about. A certain reaction to having worked with me for 6-7 months, which he was very positive about, but I was very shocked when I first heard about it because I had no idea. Because actually I just love working with actors, and they've been my raison d'etre. I came into theatre because of actors and acting, not because of sets and plays and scenery and all the other stuff. They were attractive, but I realized it was the actual process of acting. And that's what I've been pursuing more and more. And I suppose the other thing is that it's informed the book I'm writing, because I was trying to delve more deeply into what it really means to be an actor, existentially. Now, it's, a tough job and it's very exciting, and, and you get to express yourself, and there are wonderful awards and blah, blah, blah. But actually, deeply, what it requires of you if you want to be a serious actor. And it's informed what I've been writing very, very strongly. And it's made me quite alarmed about the insufficiency of most actors' skills. And it's not totally their fault. It's the fault of the profession, and often of theatre itself, the nature of theatre, which I can go into. And this has informed my thoughts about what actors really have to do, and how incredibly demanding, how complex, how full of paradoxes being an actor is. That it's a tough job, a hugely demanding job. And I can't think of any job which demands such a total commitment of a human being in every aspect of the work. Okay, mountaineers and brain surgeons, and major athletes can have to make much huger demands in particular areas, but the whole areas of their lives they don't have to deal with. And an actor has to be able to deal with all of anything that makes them themselves all the time. Their thoughts, their feelings, their minds, their brains, their bodies, their tastes, everything is there to be used. And that's a big ask. There's nothing you can leave at home, or shouldn't. And I think that one of the problems is a lot of actors leave a lot of stuff, not even in the dressing room, at home.
But when you talk like that, Mike, do you make a distinction, or are you being general about actors in every single field of their work?
No, I'm not. I do qualify it because I say quite early on, of course, it's an actor's total right to decide what sort of actor they want to be. There are some actors that just want to be entertainers and give people a good time. That's fine. That's fine. And they're not going to go beyond certain areas. They don't think they're successful in that, and they're very good at what they do. I'm talking about it in a very pure state, a very idealistic state, knowing that it's very rare to arrive at that. But I think all my work has been trying to do the best, the most truthful, the most imaginative, the most open, the most available work I possibly can. Not succeeding most of the time, but hitting a few moments which I think were pretty good. And so I'm striving for something which makes the work have meaning for you, rather than just being a very good job you do, or a very profitable, pleasant career. So but ideally and idealistically, to be an actor, what is it? What's your motivation? I mean, if your motivation is to be an actor because you can see that it's glamorous and exciting and you can express yourself and that you'll travel and you could earn lots of money and you can get on the red carpet and you can make movies and go to Hollywood and do films, and there's so much available, and you can make lots and lots of money and you'll be very famous, and all those things are very, exciting and tempting. And I must have been tempted by some of those myself when I started out. Sort of glamour of it, the excitement of it all, but something inside me saw there was something deeper. It all sounds a bit monastic, actually, what I'm saying. And there are certain companies, certainly not English ones, who commit themselves to a certain sort of work in theatre, and they almost, I mean, the Grotowski actors were almost monastic in the commitment and so forth. And Eugenio Barber, his very few group of people, they did amazing work and they still go on into old age doing it, and so I've never aspired to quite that purity, but there is that area of acting.
Yes, and it's one of the things that sort of I've always felt marks you out in some ways is a kind of European sensibility. With especially with your passion and love for Chekhov, and the sense that you wanted to explore the size and all the different dimensions of Chekhov, rather than the way you've talked about some productions where it's terribly earnest and terribly serious or whatever. But just to try and make my point more succinctly, just the idea that there is a kind of level of intensity in your work, and the work that really works, a kind of precision and intensity, size, physicality, that is not necessarily our tradition as a group of
No,
British actors.
I think that's probably true. I was brought up on English theatre, obviously, and and I think it's still true to say that on an average, English theatre, or British theatre, should we say, is still probably the best overall. Overall, you know, there's always a good quality, but for me, there's practically no British productions that have hit the heights that I've experienced with productions from other companies. Oh, yes, often European, even American, where I've been breathtaken and thinking, oh, we never get to that. Partially, it's because we never commit enough money or time to what we do. The powers that be are very parsimonious funding theatre. When I was working in Germany, in Heidelberg, they were funded up to 90% of their box office, so they only had to earn 10%. I, that would be impossible to imagine in this country. You know, we never give actors or the theatre enough money. It's always, and you've got to be so grateful for what you're getting, you know. And also this business of all things being done very quickly, which is getting worse and worse now, for particularly for people working in television. You know, from all these conversations I've been having, particularly with Pam Ferris, you know, who I now talk to weekly. Every Monday morning we have an hour Zoom. You know, we've got very, very close again after not talking to each other for 15 years, which is wonderful. And she's relaying to me a lot of the experiences she had in more recent years in television, where you can't even discuss the script. There's no time. And it's all rush and you're hardly given any time to learn it. And even the directors don't have much control. It's people sitting in offices miles away that are, you know, so the actor is the last thing. You're a commodity. You know, which is all anti-theatre and anti-creativity. Yes, so, I mean, I suppose my work has always been about detail. You know, you can always go a bit further. There's a wonderful guy called David Deutsch. He's a physicist, and he wrote a wonderful book, which I'm always referring to, called The Beginning of Infinity. And his basis is that however good something is, it can always be better. There is no end to knowledge. You must always go forward. You can never say it's not broken. Why don't fix it? It's not broken. Why change it? You know, which is wrong. There's always a possibility of going on and on. Or actors who say to you, "Oh, I want to get it right for you." There's no right. There's more and more and more. And the more I work on things, the more I can see is there. But it takes time and energy. And it's also, you've got to get rid of your ego, because a lot of directors, particularly, they're so busy making their mark and trying to create their impression and say, "Look at me, aren't I clever?" That it's all about their ideas rather than about the material itself. And I found those productions, they can be very bright, interesting, clever, but I'm never moved by them, because they're not dealing with a human being. Because I'll come to the end of this diatribe now. Theatre is the most human art, and its raw material is three human beings: the actor, the character they're playing, and the audience they're playing it for. And that's all you need for the theatre. You don't need actors, you don't need directors, you don't need designers, you don't need anybody else, you don't need writers, you just need actors, the roles they're playing, and the audience, and you have theatre. And that's the purity, and that's what I've worked from. That was my realization halfway through my career. That's what theatre is.
Yeah.
And let's explore that rather than sticking things on top of it.
Yeah. One of the sort of caveats I would put is I've just finished a 19th century novel by a woman who wrote Lady Audley's Secret. I think her name is Braddon. It's called A Strange World. And it's tangentially or partly about theatre, and it's very funny because there is, you know, the actor, the older actor, who says, "Oh, you know, it's all going to the dogs. The theatre's going to the dogs. You know, in my day it was." And I think, you know, I was talking to a friend yesterday, the day before, and he said, you know, when John Osborne and the 50s came along, you know, everybody was going, theatre's going to the dogs. So we need to be very careful, you know, as we get older. One of our tendencies as human beings is to go, well, it was a lot better in my day, as it were.
No, I was very aware of that. But you see, even when I was young, I thought the theatre was going to the dogs, because I was very critical. I can remember being very analytical when I was 16 or 17 about plays that had got good reviews, and instinct in me was quite good then. I mean, I love the idea of theatre and the atmosphere of it and so forth and so on, and watching the actors, but I can still count only on about two hands, the fingers of two hands, the productions that have really had an influence on me or really made me say, "Ah, that's theatre." And that's in what, 70 years of going to theatre, nearly, you know, something like that. You know, because it's a very difficult and rare event. No, it's absolutely true. But you see, I don't cling to the ideas of the 50s because that was hierarchical, very stately ladies and gentlemen who came to rehearsal, in suits and ties and could barely be got to move around. That's why Olivier was so extraordinary, because he moved, And I'm going to sit myself here, and if I put my arm here, I'll be more open to the audience. It was all that stuff that went on. And of course, the voice beautiful, and they were, and I have to say, you could hear and understand them. And I do think that speech on the whole, and I don't know what you'll say to Patsy Rodenberg when you talk to her, but it feels to me that most speech in the theatre now is going to the dogs because you can hardly understand anybody. And what's more, actors are mic'd, which is taking away their own ability, it's to control how they're sounding. But there's always been those wonderful individual things that one's seen all the way through one's career, which transcend fashion. You see, the problem is we always think in fashion. Most of our lives were influenced by the fashion of the moment. What's cool, what's right to think about, politically, emotionally, culturally, and most people go along with it. And a lot of it's very interesting, and you've got to see what's just purely trendy and what has real value, and that's very difficult to analyze, isn't it? But
But you see, I mean, what's so odd about that is given the rigor and kind of intellectual engagement you have. Forget all the other stuff. The fact that you're kind of quite brainy. Nevertheless, when you started doing shared experience, and when we were witnessing those kind of works, we were thinking that is revolutionary in some ways. It's not that you've come up with intellectual theatre. You've come up with something. You stripped everything back, and it felt radical as a kind of theatre. But the odd thing about that is that you are not a kind of radical human being in your own private life, as it were.
No, not at all. I'm very conformist in many ways, and I mean, I am radical in my thoughts about theatre, but no, I behave very properly. I don't go on marches. I don't protest. I don't, I'm. It's perfectly true. But I think all my energy is focused on theatre, really. Because those shows were radical because they stripped everything away and said, this is theatre, it's the actors. Look at the actors, look at their amazing invention, their cleverness, their wit, their truthfulness, their imagination, And the irony is, of course, although I'm very disciplined, the whole point was to give the actors total freedom to be fresh in performance, so they don't just repeat things that they've done already. Because it seemed to me that the only thing that theatre had left with the rise of technology, even starting with movies and then television and then all the sort of recent stuff, is that it was happening in that moment. There were these two groups of people together in the same space at the same time, and there's no reason. It's almost impossible for an actor to do the same thing twice. We as human beings, you can't do the same thing exactly twice. There's always a change, and we're always learning and shifting and adjusting. So that should be part of the live theatre. But we've talked about all this endlessly.
No, we have, and I mean, there's a couple of sort of paradoxes, your word, that I'd like to bring up. I mean, one is that you love dance, but dance is, it isn't different every night. If it was, the choreographer would be screaming at you.
No, I love novels. They don't change every. But what I love about dance is its particular skill. It is using the body in a profound way, and the actors, the dancers make you want to move like them. You suddenly see all this hidden potential, unexplored in yourself in terms of your body. And it is, it's watching a human being in action, which is just wonderful and joyous, when it's good and thrilling and daring and moving and shocking and funny and charming. And, it depends, of course, on the choreographer and so forth. But so much dance is done on empty stages, or was. And so there you were with the dancers in whatever they were wearing in a very contained light, which control. And then you just watch these people move together. They could work by themselves. They could work. They had to be wonderful partners. But no, they were doing, and they had to do pretty much everything the same because of the risk, physical danger, as an aerialist would do. But there are still little areas of openness, of possibility for them within that. But
Okay. Now I want to bring another issue, a sort of paradox here, and it's one that I was aware of when I started teaching in drama schools. One was thinking, well, where do I learn? Because I'm passing on wisdom from Mike Alfreds, for instance, but where am I learning how to evolve? And so, I remember getting people in to do masterclasses, and I'd go, "Ooh, that's a good exercise. I'm going to steal that." And trying to increase my teaching vocabulary and also as a director. How do you learn? Your actors, and I talked to an actor the other day about this. Your actors work with if they're lucky, work with a sort of 1,000 different directors, television, whatever it might be. They come to you, but you are not changing, Mike. You have got your system, as it were, and yet you're asking your actors to be within your system, which of course they are prepared to do 99% of the time. I know you've had one or two who kind of hated doing it, but the flexibility that you have to encounter with actors, because otherwise you wouldn't employ them, and also because they are so used to being flexible in terms of the way in which they respond to the stimulus from a director. Where do you get your flexibility from?
it's by watching, and because I am flexible within what I do, because everything is allowing the actors to tell me what is possible. You see, I set things up. I don't say you're going to work like this, now do it. I say go on this journey and see what you find. I don't ask for results. I ask them to always be in process.
Right.
Now, of course, actors have to be incredibly flexible because God knows they're meeting lots of different people, and every director has different language, and they've got to think, my God, what does this one want? What does that one want? And they build up a way of different ways of dealing with that. Most of the time, they just get on with what's comfortable for them, because a lot of directors don't even make demands on them except to expect them to do a good show. A lot of directors have no interest in acting or how actors work. They just cast them according to whether they think they'll be right for the part they're in, you see. So a lot of actors think, okay, well, this one I can do this one I have a little more freedom, this one I better just go along with, and a lot of actors become quite cynical or frustrated. And one of the things that is causing actors not to have skills is because they're not challenged. And you're often cast because of what you've done before. So it becomes a career of diminishing returns, because if you're always doing what you're asked to be doing, more or less, or it's expected of you, you don't search for anything new. You just go to what's safe and what's wanted, and then you start repeating yourself, and then your imagination and your body and everything else atrophies, and you don't change, and you can't change. And as actors who originally, when I first saw them, I thought, oh, they're rather good. I now think, oh God, you've been doing the same old thing for 10, 20 years. I know exactly how you're going to play a certain scene. I know exactly how you're going to deal with certain emotions, the same tropes, the same, and there's no surprise. I can visualize your performance before I get to the theater, so why should I pay? Because you're not going to surprise me. You're not giving me anything of you. You're giving me a lot of skill, and now I might love what you do and go and see you because that's what you do, which I think a lot of audiences does. But then you've got this funny area which I've just started thinking about, and I'm trying to find a way to slot it into the book, is there's a huge distinction between a personality performer and a real actor, a pure actor. Because if I go to see a rock concert or a group, it's because it's not just the music, it's their personalities, isn't it? And I know what they're going to give me, and I love going to see that. Or I go to see a stand-up comic because I really, a comedian. I know they're going to come with their persona and they're going to give me that, and I'm really going to enjoy it. And I go back because it gives me pleasure just to watch that particular thing. And there are a lot of actors who hover between that, so they always feel they have to do the same thing because that's what their fans will like. But a pure actor, I mean, a truthfully profound actor, has to say it's not about me, it's about what does this role and this play require of me, and it cannot be the same all the time. And as I am a human being, my potential is much, much bigger than I'm allowing myself to explore. In fact, as a human being, I am endless in my possibilities. There's no limit to my potential. Whereas when I use my personality or my celebrity, I'm locking myself into that's my potential I'm going to give you. And you either like it or you don't like it as an audience. But I love the actor who takes you on a journey in which they surprise themselves and they surprise you, and they do things you never would have thought of, and they take your breath away. And that's when I feel I'm really seeing theatre. When it can be in comedy. I mean, two of my most profound experiences have been seeing actors go somewhere quite extraordinary in two plays which are basically funny, and the comic situation is so serious from both that it veers into tragedy. And suddenly in the audience, you're suddenly, oh my God. You stop laughing and you're almost in tears because the truth of the actor has taken you somewhere else. And that for me is absolutely thrilling. And then I think that's why I work in theatre. Now, that little phrase has been given to me quite a few times by actors, different countries, saying, I saw your show and it reminded me of why I wanted to be an actor. And that made me feel very, very good. Not all the time, but, I'd say about half a dozen to 10, 10 times. And that phrase has come back to me. I saw your show the other day and it made sense to me why I work in theatre. There's something there. It's, you see, what I'm talking about is the total commitment of the actor to the moment. They're playing everything that's necessary. It's not about letting it all hang out of me being emotional and showing you how emotional that is, because that's just exploitation and self-indulgence. It's actually doing everything that material requires of me, and allowing myself to make discoveries or let discoveries take me somewhere and not blocking them. Anyway.
So what I've learned talking to some of the actors that you've worked with is that they needed to have a kind of very strong center themselves, and it's something that we're going to have. There's going to be an interview with Michelle Williams, who you've worked with. And she talks about how you allowed her to go to places, but there was always a safe space that she came back to. That as soon as that actually, because you're not demanding that people kind of mine their personal, their personal life, and you make it in one of our interviews, you do a lovely thing about Hamlet, you're not a prince, your father is not being poisoned by your uncle, and how do you identify with that? Well, you use your imagination, and and so your imagination is a wonderful place that doesn't necessarily force you to kind of suffer, although you might suffer in the moment because you're present.
Yeah. You see, a lot of this book I'm writing is about the whole problem of emotion and the actor getting totally muddled up between their feelings and the emotion they want to display. And it's often very self-indulgent and waste time, and it's not true to the play. And it's, oh, I felt this and I feel, and they're always saying, I feel, I feel. And I say to actors, what are you doing in this scene? And they say, oh, I feel. And I say, no, I don't want to know what you're feeling. What are you doing? What are you doing? What is your character doing? What are they trying to achieve? Stop telling me about how you're feeling. You'll feel what you feel, and that'll be true. I don't want to know. Don't give me words. Don't put words to your feelings. And interviews with actors, they're unbearable. Oh, I feel, oh, and I felt, and I was so honored, and I felt wonderful working with director. Oh, and the rehearsals, they were thrilling and they were exhausting. And the performance, it's exhausted me, and it's thrilling me, and it's exhausting me, and I identify with Medea and all this rubbish that goes on. It's all it's all beside the point. They've gone off on the wrong track. You don't have to do any of that. You're a human being, and therefore anything that's human is available to you.
Yeah.
And from any time, any period, we're all hardwired the same.
Yeah.
And so, although we've been brought up, grown up in certain cultures, and obviously we're influenced by those, and they're very, very strong, we can transcend those.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a murderer inside me potentially.
Yeah.
It's not nice to think about, but yes, I mean, human beings, we are deeply flawed, and being in the wrong place, the wrong time, the wrong circumstances could elicit anything. So if somebody's playing Othello, which I think I quote, all right, it's unlikely that you've experienced wanting to kill somebody because they've betrayed you, but it's in you somewhere, that possibility. And for this performance, I'm afraid you have to go there.
Yeah.
At some degree, or you'll find your way there.
Yeah.
Sense of, it's difficult. But anyway, look, we've talked lots about me. Let's talk about you, because I mean, you've been doing all this work and listening to all this and listening to me going on and on and on and repeating myself, and you've been listening to actors, people who work in theatre. I mean, how was it for you, Peter?
Well, I think I might have said in one of our interviews that I auditioned for you as a young actor, and I didn't get into your company. And I, like a lot of people who have come up to you and said, that's what I thought theatre was. I mean, the reason I wanted to audition for you was because at the time I was an actor, and I saw a few of those early productions with Shared Experience, and they were like nothing I'd ever seen before. And then I had it was wonderful because I was working up in Sheffield when Cymbeline came up, and so I got to meet the actors, I got to meet you, and we've kind of stayed in contact ever since, basically. And I've got over the fact that you turned me down for your company, but what I learned in that week, because it was a week-long audition that we did, and you had a music person there, and of course the music was great for me because I sang and I was musical, and I loved showing off about the music, but I have very vivid memories of doing improvisations with other actors and absolutely blocking them and myself from beginning to end. So I was as boring as the day is long, basically. And when I stopped acting and started teaching and directing myself, I used to look and think, why on earth do you bother to block yourself? As a human being, as an actor, what's there to lose if you just give yourself to that moment? If you just completely commit to whatever it is that you're being asked to do, what have you got to lose? This is a safe space. What you've got to lose is, people will judge you, people will think that you've gone over the top, you've done this, you've done that, and therefore you're not adequate, or, you made a fool of yourself, or whatever it might be. but it seemed so futile and wasteful of one's life and one's energy to just block yourself off from what was going on. And I was very aware as an actor, especially in my 20s. I mean, I was a professional actor until I was 30. And I've often said and often thought that probably I was a good actor in my teens. You know, and when I played Hamlet at 18, I've seen little clips of me, and I'm, you know, dare I say it, I'm good. You know, because actually I'm not thinking to. I mean, I was clever enough to understand the text, but you know what I mean. I wasn't really kind of going, how does one act? And I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, an actor called Danny Webb, and we were in a play together at Bristol, Bristol Old Vic, just before I stopped acting full time. And I said to him, there was this moment when my character was watching you and two other people as sort of punk musicians. And I felt threatened and scared by you. I was what's called an A&R man, which is a guy who recruits musicians, you know, rock bands. And so I had a sort of suit and a kind of tie slightly undone, and I was thought of myself as quite a cool dude, you know. And I remember feeling terrified of these three people and thinking, I shouldn't be feeling terrified. And then, of course, retrospectively, I thought, well, of course, because they were threatening me on that stage and they were threatening my character. And so those feelings that they were creating in me were perfectly valid. And my repression of those feelings was also valid because I didn't want to appear to them to be scared of them. You know, so all that was good. But somehow I had taught myself that those things were not good. And that audition that I did with you, I've often said I should have stopped acting straight away. Well, of course, in a sense, I shouldn't have stopped acting, but I should have learned how to release oneself. And
But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because, I mean, we spend our lives blocking things, and it's all about fear. Sometimes it's very healthy to be frightened because, you know, it's a warning. But you're quite right. What have you got to lose as an actor? If you keep open, you're likely to discover, and things that don't work will just vanish. You know, it doesn't. And it's your right to make mistakes, to make a fool of yourself, to go over the top. It's right. It's part of the process of. If you always want to be protected and good all the way through rehearsal, you discover nothing. You have to allow yourself to be bad to be good, don't you? In a way, you have to, you know. I mean, that's another thing that I find so poignant and important about acting. If you act in the way that I visualize it, it should be helping you to lead your life more healthily. You should be a better person, more open, more aware, learning more and more about yourself. In fact, it could be a most wonderful profession. Instead of being this anxiety ridden, you know, am I successful? Am I earning enough money? Who wants me? Can I get part? Does that director like me? Was I good in that part? The audience didn't laugh at that. Or going through all this, living with all this anxiety is, you know, not the way to work. I'm an actor. I'm coming in. I'm going to do my work, and people will like it who will like it, and people who won't. And you know, to find the calmness.
yeah,
You see, what I've found about some of the actors who I do adore working with, and who I've found most open, is that they seem to lack that sort of ego. They want to be successful and they want to be liked, of course, who wouldn't? But there's something beyond that, which the actual execution of acting itself is so reinforcing for them. They just love to be in rehearsal. It's not about, oh, is this show going to be a success? Or in your brain, it's actually, oh, I'm on the stage, you know, we're working out because they're opening themselves, because it's feeding them. And that's what, if actors only realize that being a good actor, you are feeding yourself as a human being, you're enriching yourself. And when you come out of a day's work you should feel that much richer, tired, obviously, and maybe frustrated and so forth, but you should feel richer about yourself. And the sad thing is, when I've often talked to actors about, when I'm meeting actors before I do a show and looking for a cast, a lot of them have said to me, look, I've worked quite a lot this year. I've done, 3 plays and I've done lots of telly, and I've had no experience whatsoever. I've just gone in, done them, finished them, and it's like I never did them. I've gone through no process. I've had no experience. And I think that's the truth for a lot of actors, particularly in television. You go on and you do it, and then you haven't grown.
Yeah. But I mean, the ones without the ego, it's a chicken and egg situation, because quite often you will have worked with people who have had a lot of are getting a lot of work anyway. I'm just thinking about the fact that nowadays actors are doing what are called self tapes, I think. They are sitting in front of this computer here, and they are recording themselves. They're sending that off to a casting director who will be eating their lunch, chatting to their friend, and watching 15 seconds of your self-tape that you've spent 4 hours putting together. You've got no personal contact with the director. You've got no contact with the casting director. You have no opportunity to try it a different way, to show how flexible you might be as an actor. And so this, what did you say, commodity, this commodification of actors.
Well, that's what's happening absolutely more and more. And again, in the book, I've written about this quite a lot, the whole process, the casting process is horrendous. I mean, it's so much a commodity that I know of an actor who, middle-aged, who was put up by his agent for a job, and the character has a daughter, and the casting people said, oh, we're looking for authentic fathers and daughters to play this role. And that is a sort of insult to acting. I mean, is that going to be more real?
No.
It's all the confusion between sort of, live, what do we call it on television, all the sort of live shows that are on now, from Big Brother onwards. It's a terrible confusion, like audiences being voyeurs to real people doing things, but it doesn't make it more truthful or more talented, so yes, they are commodified, and it's they're sort of algorithms. They've become sort of walking, talking algorithms, and there's no humanity. I mean, I wouldn't dream of casting somebody from looking at a tape. I want to know them. I want to feel them. I want to feel their atmosphere. Do they like me? Do I like them? Do I want to be in a room with them for any period of time? I mean, in the last half of my career, shall we say, because I was lucky enough to have very long rehearsal periods, I kept, one of my sort of criteria for actors, would I be happy to spend 6, 7, or 8 weeks in the same room with this person? Yes, I would. No, I wouldn't. I mean, there are some talented people, but they're not right for you, and you're not right for them. And so one should be aware of that and cut your losses. It's more than just doing a job. It's actually living a life. I mean, I do think theatre is incredibly rich, but what you went through is very interesting. And I don't know, has anything, from doing all these interviews, has anything, other realizations come to you, or about yourself, or generally about life, or theatre, or?
I think one of the things that I've become, because I remember at one point quite early on you said, okay, well, we were talking about objectives, and you said, well, what's your objective doing these interviews? And I kind of floundered a little bit because I hadn't really thought about it. And then I was thinking, well, I wonder whether this is an objective, but this is what drove me, is the fact that I think I am attracted to people who have a kind of one-track mind. And we've discussed this in terms of my own personality. I mean, I've got the bass guitar here. I've got my paintings up there. I've written, I've had 40 plays produced. I've been an actor. I sing.
Play
I
cricket.
love I love playing cricket. Um, and I am a kind of butterfly in many senses. I am not, I don't think, brilliant at any of those things. I'm certainly not brilliant at cricket. I was good, but I wasn't brilliant. My painting is probably still very mediocre. My bass playing is, my singing's okay. And probably, given the right kind of stimulus, I might have been a good actor, you know?
Your writing is good. It's very good, I
But I
think.
don't I don't take myself seriously as a writer. I think that's the thing is I didn't have that kind of drive. And so I'm attracted to people with drive in that way. And as you know, my wife has drive, and you are somebody that is just fanatical about what they do, and it showed and so one grateful is that the right word, but when you have memories of some of those early productions from shared experience, you know that they are very precious and they're very important. And so my objective has partly been to discover something about, I'm attracted to somebody who wants to do something so badly that they, in a sense, that's become their lives. And anybody who's good at anything is always an attractive proposition, aren't they?
Well,
I find.
I don't know. I mean, they can be, people who are good at things can be obnoxious. They can be unbearable.
Yes, but on the other hand, but it's fascinating to find out why
Okay, yeah,
they've
right.
wanted to do that.
Yeah,
Why have they wanted to become good composers or good
yeah.
cricketers or whatever? That 10,000 hours that one talks about.
Yeah,
You've
well,
done.
there you are. You see, to be really good at something, it is this theoretical 10,000 hours. And no actor,
But
the
Mike,
actor,
you've got to be fair on actors because the problem with actors, unlike me with my bass guitar or me warming up and singing, is that it's very hard for actors when they're not with other people to practice their craft.
yeah, but then you get together other people and you solve that problem. There's lots of things you can do by yourself.
Like,
Like an opera singer, they spend hours working on their voices, don't they? So they can do duets and trios and God knows what else. And it's not just arias, is it? No, I mean, it's limited, of course, and you want to be with other people, but, they could read in more depth. There's many, many things actors could do. Go and take classes. I mean, I'm writing about all this, and the problem is that it's a minefield for actors. You see, the drama training, most of the time, it's very well meaning, but they're given masses of stuff. They get a little bit of everything and not enough of anything. So they don't come out with clear techniques that they can use immediately. You know, when I trained as a director at Carnegie Mellon, in America, after my 3 years, what was wonderful about that training, I came out with techniques that I could use professionally immediately. So I didn't feel inadequate in that sense. I mean, I lacked experience, but I had these tools that had been drilled into me and which are with me still. You see, that's the thing. In order for the actor to, you see, the trouble is that what's attractive about acting is that anybody can do it. It looks so anybody can only just talk, oh, I could be an actor. Well, no, you can't be an actor. You can pretend to be an actor and get away with it a bit. But there's an awful lot of work that you've got to have skills which will allow your talent out. Pianist. Look, as a cricketer, you have to spend a lot of time in the nets, don't you?
and you have to get very fit. You
Yeah,
have,
there are certain things you have to do. Yes, your body has to be alive and vulnerable to you, and the The trouble is all this stuff costs money, and most actors, of course, there's far too many actors, and most of them are unemployed, and therefore they can't afford to take all these classes.
Yeah.
There's a million classes out there. Oh, I should take a movement class. Well, what sort of movement class? There are dozens. What do I need exactly? Oh, I should take some voice classes. What voice classes? How many? How often? How? Oh, there's, you know, there's there's a, you know, Meisner workshop. Oh, should I go and do that? Oh, there's a Michael Chekhov workshop. Oh, should I go and do that? How long is that on for? You know, there's no end to it. I mean, it's difficult, and the drama school should be providing much more of that, much more intensely, and much more with much more focus. You know, but
Mike, I'm going to ask you what might be a final question. I mean, can you imagine yourself in a rehearsal room again?
well, I'm going into one hopefully next April.
Okay, tell us.
God, I mean, you know, it's something we were literally, the day we were meant to start rehearsing, the lockdown came. Yeah. Everything was ready, you know, to go. It was a project I've been working on for about over 2 years. It was devising a piece for a company called Visible Theatre, which was mainly focusing on older life. You know, how do people lead your life as you get older? And the fact that old people can be very interesting, and employing largely people in their late 60s, 70s, and so forth. And I'd seen some of their shows, which were very good. And Sonia Linden, who runs the company, asked me if I'd be interested in doing a project on sleep, which has stemmed out of her having difficulty getting decent sleep. And I said, that sounds very interesting. And well, I won't go into the details of it, but over 2 years it evolved. And I did it through a lot of workshops in which actors created characters who couldn't sleep for various reasons. And we ended up with a script. And we were about to do it when the Southwark Playhouse. So we've waited, hopefully, for the pandemic to sort of calm down a little bit. And so it'll be 2 years exactly when we start again. So I hope I'll be fit enough and have the energy. I don't know, it's going to be a bit of a question for me, because I mean, over these 2 years of the pandemic, I have aged quite a lot. Physically, I get tired more quickly, you know, which is a bit alarming, and so forth and so on. But we'll see. I'm intending to. The script is there. I did read it again, and it still works very nicely. Then there was a thought, oh, should we update it, include, COVID in? And I thought, no, that's just ridiculous, and it'll just throw everything. We must keep things the way they are. And then hopefully the actors will be available. In theory they are. Whether they will be, it's a problem. And it would be ghastly to have to recast it, but if I have to, that's what will happen. And I think it's a good piece, you know. Well, obviously I do. No, it'd be very nice. It'd be very nice to be in rehearsal again with actors, because as much as I've embraced COVID and worked very well with it and had very nice results with it, you know, for example, with Michelle Williams, there's something stultifying after a while, because I'm not in the room with you.
Yeah.
And so I can't breathe you. You know what I mean? I just... it's pretty good, but it's not it, you know. So so that's there. So there we are. That's my answer to that. So all being well, in another 6 months or whatever, hopefully I'll be sitting in a rehearsal room. And no, I start rehearsing in March actually, and we open in the middle of April.
Right. Okay. Good.
April, May, Southwark Playhouse. And it's called 5 Characters in Search of a Good Night's Sleep.
Okay. Well, Mike, I'm not going to get too sentimental, but thank you so much for this last year. Well, no, a year and a half that we've kind of done all this stuff together.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And let's not say no, because you might suddenly have an impulse to something might happen. There's never an end to anything. Knowledge goes on. I don't know. It'll be very interesting. It's been wonderful for me because, as I say to you, just to sum up very quickly, I've learned so much more about myself, my work. I've had reunions with people I haven't seen for ages, so it's been very reinforcing, and it's made me also very aware of my own limitations and made me critical of myself in a quite comfortable way. I feel I'm old enough now to say, oh, you didn't do that very well, and that was very clumsy, and that show wasn't as good as you thought it was. It's actually been quite healthy to be able to look at yourself with less ego, shall we say, than you might have done. Not entirely, because if I had had no ego, we wouldn't have been doing this series. but on the whole, it's been very healthy, therapeutic, informative. I feel I've grown. Thank you very much. And oh, by the way, Peter, I have to say to you, because you haven't added this to your list of what it's given, you have become or are a wonderful interviewer. You've been incredibly good, sympathetic, warm, open, alert, spontaneous. That's been a great pleasure to watch that side of you, which I wasn't aware of. And I don't know how much you were aware of it, how much you've developed in that side of your skills.
It's not something that I've thought about, but it's also interesting that I am, I kind of almost deliberately never prepared anything. It might be just because I'm incredibly lazy. But also, I think sometimes, if you've got your list of questions, then you're not really actually listening.
No, I mean, I think the things that you want to ask are sitting inside you, and the things you forget, they're not important. I think that spontaneity is nice. It's fine. And whatever comes out of an interview comes out of it. I mean, there's lots of things I haven't touched on, or little areas of things I wanted to correct. Oh, there is one thing I did want to say. This is sort of correction, because a couple of actors have repeated it, and I got a bit touchy about that. They were sort of saying, I want you actors to be different every night. I don't want you to repeat anything. And both in different phrases have said it's very different. It's a bit of a tyranny to have to be different every night. Well, the whole point is, I'm not saying to you actors, you have got to consciously be determined to be different every night. But if you play truthfully, you will be different every night. It's not an injunction. It's not a demand. You go in and play truthfully, and it will be different, because that's how humanity works. So I just wanted to correct that little thing. On which note, big kisses, and thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure. And
no doubt we'll talk again.
I'm sure we will. And I look forward to the remaining interviews that have to go out. Yeah.
There's only a few more. All right. Take care, Mike.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. And I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button, and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do, and at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.